Our text for today is found in the 14th chapter of the book of Genesis. Chapter 14 of Genesis, we'll begin reading at verse 10 and read through verse 16. Genesis 14:10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Then one who had escaped came and told Abraham the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abraham. Now when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants, who were born in his own house, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And may God add his blessing to the reading of his word today. When we think of the famous Old Testament man named Abraham, we think of many things. We think of the man whom God called and used to give birth and rise to his chosen people here on earth. We think of a man who left his home, family, and country in order to obey God's will and call for his life. We think of Abraham, and we think of the man having a child at the ripe young age of 100. Now, folks, that's a man. Would you agree with that, men? When you can have a child at 100, that's a man. But we also think of this man who allowed his nephew Lot to have the first choice as to the best land, which obviously the first choice belonged to Abraham. And then we think of Abraham, and we think of the man who was willing to sacrifice that child he had on the burnt offering before God provided the sacrifice. And then when we think of Abraham, we think of Hebrews 11, which is the Bible's Faith Hall of Fame. And out of all the people listed and mentioned in Hebrews 11, this man is given more space and verses than anyone else. We think of all that about this man, and we know why he is called the father of faith. But when we think of Abraham, we normally and usually don't think of a soldier, do we? A warrior, a veteran. But in our text for today, we find that the amazing Abraham wore this hat as well. And as we're about to see, he wore this hat very, very well. First of all, let's look at the report that was given to Abraham. The report is found in verse 13, and it was a very bad and bleak report. The report was that Sodom and Gomorrah had been invaded and defeated. The cities had lost many people and many possessions. Included in their loss was Lot, the nephew of Abraham. For as verse 12 tells us, Lot was taken captive by these invading armies. Now, upon hearing this report, now let's look at the response of Abraham. In light of how Lot had treated Abraham, in choosing the best land, Abraham could have very well washed his hands of Lot and did nothing. He could have said, well, Lot made his bed there in Sodom and Gomorrah, let him lie in his bed and let him die in that bed. He chose to live there, I didn't. Let him take what follows. Let him reap what he has sown. No skin off my back. I don't have a dog in this hunt. Tough snuff. But Abraham didn't take that approach. No. Instead, he assembled his 318 servants and turned them into an army of soldiers to go and rescue his nephew Lot. Out of his compassion, concern, and care for Lot, Abraham went to war in order to save Lot. Next of all, let's note the risk that Abraham took. In the earlier part of this chapter, we're told that it was 4 different kings leading 4 different armies that had invaded and defeated Sodom and Gomorrah. So as he goes to save Lot, Abraham is going to go up against 4 different armies. And I'm sure that each of these 4 armies had his little army badly outnumbered and outarmed. So in light of this, Abraham was taking a huge risk in engaging in this battle. But in light of this, we next note the readiness of Abraham. Verse 14 tells us he armed and trained his 318 servants. Abraham did not lead his men into battle unarmed and untrained. No, he got them ready to go to war and to win the war. He prepared them with the training they needed, and he provided them with the weapons they needed to win. Abraham, if you will, put his troops through boot camp. He gave them their basic training so they could win. And then we note the resourcefulness of Abraham. Look at how smart and shrewd he was in the strategy he came up with. Verse 15 tells us he divided his forces. And then it says he launched his attack at night. Abraham attacked this larger army from different directions. And he attacked them at night while they were probably sound asleep and sawing logs. So Abraham was very resourceful in using both his troops and the timing in his attack. And then because of all of this, we come to the result of this battle. The result is given in verse 16. So he brought back the goods and also brought back Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. Abraham's battle plan worked to perfection. He won the victory by rescuing his nephew Lot, plus the other people of Sodom and Gomorrah and their belongings. So Abraham proved to be both brave and bright, both smart and strong. Abraham showed himself to be a fine fighter, a wonderful warrior, a smart soldier, and a victorious veteran. And because he was, he saved a lot of lives and won freedom for a lot of people. And as we honor our Abrahams here today, we thank our Abrahams for the freedom that they have provided and preserved for us. For as we saw in Abraham, we see in you. So Abrahams, we thank you for your response to serve us. We thank you for the risk you took to serve us. We thank you for the readiness and the resourcefulness you showed in serving us. And of course, we thank you for the result of you serving us. For as it was with Lot, so it is with us. If it wasn't for his Abraham, Lot would not have been free. And if it wasn't for our Abrahams, if it wasn't for our veterans, we would not be free either. So, to all of our Abrahams, to all of our veterans, we say once again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.